mangosteen. Yes? Mangosteen is one of my favorite, and I thought they're more expensive here than anywhere else, but they were the cheapest food that I found. I bought others as well. This was, I was surprised, so I took some of those good things. Now, thank you for the introduction. Thank you for inviting me to come to this beautiful place. It's always a privilege for me to come to a new place, to meet new people, and to see how people think. See, my own practice, I started in 2004, but back then I had no idea how people think. I just learned that by talking to them. And so I'm always happy to see how you're doing. And as a physician, you always work with the heart of man. I have a good friend that says you are an ENT and the heart doctor. Because you cannot work with man if you don't work also with his heart, with his mind, there where he actually lives. Now, yes, I have started 20 years before in my practice, and I had not many ideas to know why my patient got sick. So people come to me with headaches as an ENT physician. They come to me with atopic dermatitis or any kind of disease that you see on the nose there. And then they come with fever, or they come even with foot fungus, even though I'm an ENT and I shouldn't deal with the feet, but I learned to see the whole human being as a whole and not separate it. See, when I once went, I was a medical student and I went with my grandma to an ENT doctor because she had a lump here in her left parotid. And then she complained to the doctor and said, I have so pain in my legs. And then the doctor said, well, I'm not responsible for that. I'm just up here. Well, that's not a good thing to be a physician, to just be responsible for a certain area, because we have to understand the whole human being, how he works. So when people have a flu or tinnitus, the ringing in the ear. So when I was confronted with these things, personally in my practice, you see, when you're in a hospital, you have an attending physician, you have someone to ask, what should I do with this, or what should I do with that? But when you get into your own practice, you're all on your own. And now you have to do the job. And as an ENT, you get every age of patients. You don't have just old people or middle age, you have children. It's everything comes to ENT. And so people come with their different symptoms, and the question is, do I understand what the body communicates with this? I said something sometimes to my patient. I remember one that challenged me because his ears were turning off and on, and he did not know why. And so I told him he should drink more water. So after a while he came back and said, Doctor, I now drink 3 liters of water and my ears are still not fixed. And then, of course, now as a physician, you're used to change either medication or higher the dose. So maybe 3.5 liters will make it, yes? But then I realized, do I really understand the message of the body? Do I really understand it? And I had to admit, I did not. I had to admit, I did not. And so imagine, you study many years to become a physician. And then you find yourself in the practice, and you can tell your patient, oh, I know how your disease is called, because we know the names of those things. I know even a prescription that I can write you down, but I don't know where you have it from. Is that a nice position to be? It's a terrible position to be, to say, I don't know. Now, if I would not be a professional person, I would say, I'm a simple person, I don't know. See, when you ask me about computers, I will admit that I don't know because I'm not a professional in those things. But to be a professional in health and not knowing what makes one sick was a non-acceptable position in which I was. And I had no other way than to study it for myself. Of course, I had God as my helper because I went to him and said, if you don't help me, because you made us, only you can help me to understand the human. Because in the books and in the way I studied it in my university, we did not find out. I was not taught. Look, disease or certain symptoms speak this. Now, meanwhile, it's 20 years later, I'm very thankful that I can offer to my patient to give them an answer for their condition. And that's a beautiful way to be. Now, I cannot fix them, but I can give them the right prescription, so to say, what they have to do in a way to remove the cause. So, what does the body communicate? Does it communicate? Do you understand your body when he speaks to you? Let's see, when he gives the signal that he's missing something. Usually then he gives a signal when something is missing to the system. When something is too much. Last night I was invited to go to eat good food, and sometimes when the food is too good, you don't know what is too. Yeah? And then you feel it later in the night. That it was too much, so your body is telling it to you so that you learn a lesson. Next time when you go, you need to understand, okay, what's the measure? Because the body will tell it to you. Sometimes only after, but even when it comes after, you learn it then. Then he tells you when something was too much. Something is too much or was too much to this translation. He tells you when it is injured. Yeah, when you injured yourself, you feel something. And you know what to do you? You keep away when you hit yourself with a hammer, or yeah? Keep away from it. The body is silent when everything is satisfied. Yes? Then you have no symptom, everything is good. So the first question is, can you give signals by accident? Or are his signals always intentional? That's a very important question, isn't it? Because in the way we treat sometimes patients, we say, oh, this is by accident happened. I had a young man as a patient. He was 16, a boy, child, and he went to he got a brain tumor on his, I believe, right or left side of the brain. And he went to the doctors, the parents went with him to the neurosurgeon, and they asked him and said, why did he get this tumor? And now this famous neurosurgeon says, bad luck. Bad luck? Is disease bad luck? If it's bad luck, then can we do something about it? If the body speaks accidentally, then how can we do anything about it? Yes, that we removed the tumor, but these people came to me after 1 year after the tumor was removed, and he grows back. So what do I do with them? Everyone is awake? So something. You see, technique, do you think that's a mistake by accident? Yes or no? Is that a signal by accident? Yes or no? Oh, I hear yes and no, so you should get united. So was that signal an accident? I didn't understand the question. You see, in the technical world, everything you do is absolute. And if there is something that is not working well, it will tell you. So that can never be an accident. It's accidental that it happened, but it's a law that is behind that, where something interferes which is not allowed to interfere. So signals that are in our body and in our technical world cannot be by accident. Cannot be by accident. So the tumor does not follow an accidental happening. But you need to know what is behind it. So imagine our body will say to us, would give us the feeling of hunger, and we would not understand the message. What would happen with us? If the body would tell us the hunger, do you understand hunger? I think it's the same feeling like in Germany or in Europe or whenever you go, we all have the same feeling when we are hungry. So, and do we know the message? Do you need to learn this in school? Yes or no? No, there's no school for this. You know it. When your body tells you lack food, then you have to understand the message, because if you don't understand it, what would happen? You would die. Imagine you would not understand that message. And then when you're thirsty, you would not understand that you miss water. Imagine when you're thirsty, you would go to sleep. Would that fix it? You would do something bad, but you would not supply the need that the body tells you is there and is needed. When you're tired, you would just eat. You know, some people, when they're tired, they eat. But it fixes their sleep. Well, when I did night shifts, and I hate it, and I still hate night shifts, I don't like night shifts, in order to stay awake, you eat. Yeah? It gives you some power, but it will not supply your lack of sleep. You need to recuperate it somehow, or you need to get it back. So when you're shortness of breath, you know you lack of oxygen. When you're freezing, you lack of warmth. Yeah? So I turned off my air conditioning in my room because it was too cold. Because I like it to be more warm. So when we're freezing, it's lack of warmth, and when we're sweating, it's too much heat. Now imagine that we would not understand these messages. It's the body language. And we would just not know what to do when he shows us the signal. In all of this, we have no issues. But when the body comes with inflammation, with pain, what does he lack? What does he lack? Because will he come up when everything is fine? No. Because the well-being is the normal state. To feel good is the normal state. That's why when people are getting a symptom, they get dizzy or ringing the ear, they come, and then you need to understand the message. Now, here we have no idea, do we? Do we know what is missing in the body? What does the body language tell you when you're dizzy? What is it? We have seen that all the signals must be intentional, because if they're not intentional, they will not save a life. So we need to understand, any one of us, because we want to know what our body tells us. No? And that's one of the most important things. Because is disease growing or is disease going backwards? What is disease? It's a growing thing. You know, in my 20 years of experience, you know at what age most humans die? And this is my feeling and it's my observation. It's between 40 and 60. Most people I know die. Only the old people get old. Yeah? But the young people, they are feeble in their very early ages. How much autistic people are growing? Is autism growing or not? It's exploding. ADHD, AIDS, yeah, you know. And depression is growing. Every disease is growing. When I was in medical school, and that's a few years ago, age was a risk factor to get disease, to get sick. You didn't have heart attacks with 15 years old. You didn't have strokes in childhood. At least we did learn about this. Now we have them in childhood. We didn't have psychiatry children. Now they are with their problems at the age of 6 to 7 they went to the psychiatry hospitals. We had them in the more teenage years. So disease is something that is not in the decreasing, even though we think knowledge is getting better. Actually, disease will only go back when we have understood the message of the body, what it says. And I am so glad that we can know it. And that's why I'm traveling wherever I'm called to go, because it's the most important thing to understand what do we miss. What is the body missing when you are sick? So how can we find out what the body communicates when we're sick? Do we need to know something, or do we just have to guess? Do we need to know something? For sure. What do we need to know? What would be that thing that is essential to know, to understand? First of all, we would need to know the nature of man. What we would need to know what his needs are there. Where does he has to supply his needs? Because not knowing where the needs, what needs are there, then we don't know what the body tells us when he lacks something. And then we need to know the law that governs our life. I have this general title of my presentations, The Law of Life, because I understood that things work by law. They don't work by accident. They don't work by chance. Everything that works by law. And the natural law must be understood. But I must confess to you that when I started back in 2004, I did not know neither the human nature, neither the law that governs life. So I had to find it out. And the first question was, do I know the human being? How can you repair a computer if you don't know how it works? Can you repair that? Would you ever go with your car to a mechanic that has no idea about how the car works? Would you go or not? No, you would not go. Now, we all suppose the physician knows. And yes, he has a lot of knowledge, but there was something essential that I missed and that I believe is missing generally in our medical science. And that is to know the human being, to know the object we were working with. So how did I come to find out the human being? And I did it without, in a simple way. I put the patient, his age, in a timeline, and I put on one side his physical history. So I started with the list of physical complaints. Headache, since when do you have headache? Which side? When does it appear? The details. Neck tensions, since when do you have neck tensions? When did your ringing in the ear start? Which ear? How does it is? How is it? Low frequency or high frequency? Dizziness. When did it come? How does it work? And all those things. So you take all the details of the patient and put it in a timeline. Now, many people who come to my practice are surprised when I go beyond my own field. And just the other day, I had an 80-year-old lady who came to me because since 2 days, her right ear is making certain noises. It's as if it gets something like an explosion is in my ear. It comes. And so these are symptoms, usually doctors don't know what to do with it. But it's a body sign, it's a body language. And as I understand what he says, I say, okay, as a physician, I need to know what the body tells her so that I can tell her what she lacks. So I didn't ask her only about her other physical symptoms. I asked her about her surgical interventions, when they did take place. She had not much of her, she was quite healthy at the age of 18 years old, and I asked her about miscarriages and all those things, and I made a very plain history of the body. But now I don't stop with her here. Of course, I do the hearing test and the needed consultations, but then I start with the mental history. And I ask them about relationships between their parents, relationship with their mother, relationship with father, spouse, children, relationship in marriage, divorce, death, loved ones, or events in your life. And then when did they take place? And then you put them all in a timeline here on the other side to see where they fit in time. And then you put employment conditions and occupations, unemployment, and of course, special events, traumas, abuses, and all those things you put there that you lived through. And then you put them there, and I did this at the beginning. And if every physician would do this, they would see the same thing I saw. What did I see? What did I see? Didn't take me, I don't know, more than 10 or 100 patients. I mean, right now, intense, I don't know, maybe 10,000 patients. I see only in my practice, I've seen 30,000 patients. But then, where I traveled for 50 years, I have seen many other places. So, what did I see? I see in the body the reflection of the thoughts. And I was so amazed I went home every day telling my teenage children, we have raised 6 foster children, and 3 were still at home, and they were at the age of 14, 16, and 18. And I told them the story. I said, look, the lady has an infection of her ear, and the history shows that the infection came after her husband was put into the hospital. The next day, her infection. And then the other stories, the vocal cord got paralyzed after she heard that her husband betrayed her. So that was you had a symptom and you had the story. And I told that to my teenagers. How did they react? Did they say, you're a good doctor? They questioned it, and I will show you how they questioned it. But after 2.5 years, it took me 2.5 years, I was convinced that the body just is a mirror of what the person thinks. Now I asked this 80-year-old lady about her mental issues, and her physical diseases were beautifully shown up the way her history was. Now I could go into all the history, but since the symptom was recent, it must be a recent thing. That must be something that is acute there. And so I asked her, and she told me that 2 years ago, her husband passed away. And that was bringing up to her hypertension. But what was in my field, the right side of the ear, and we'll see why it's right and left and so on, you know what happened? And it's not my first case that I see this. Her cat passed away. Do you have cats here in Singapore? You have pets at home? Is there a bond that you bind to them? Yes? This cat was now sick for 3 months, and they didn't find anything out. And since it's a cat that can go out, it's not living in the house just with her. She said the cat left 2 days ago, and I don't know where it gone. Probably gone somewhere to hide and pass away. That is known that cat are doing that. They want to die, don't die. Yes, they go somewhere to hide. So, would you bring the death of a cat together with the noise in the ear? Would you? As a normal physician, you would never do that. You would think that is out of the world. But when I asked her his history, she started weeping. And she said, I thought I came to the ENT doctor, not the psychiatrist or the psychologist. Well, I said, a physician, and this is my point, has to know everything. Do you like those physicians? He has to know the whole human being. Because we are one. We are not put in parts. And I think specializing is beneficial if it's about surgeries, it's about intervention, and you're specialized in this and this. So that's a technical thing where specialty might be beneficial. But in the way to see the whole human being as a physician, every physician should know the basics and know what the body tells you as a whole, not just as a, staying in your field and then remaining in your field. So the lady was quite surprised that I asked her about her thoughts, and I confirmed to her, I said, we need to change the way we think, as well to the death of your husband, as well as to the death of your cat. But you see, she's a single She's alone. I can't remember exactly if she has 2 children, but they don't live with her. So now, when the husband passed away, she still had her cat. And I tell you, my wife has a cat that takes my place when I'm not there. You know, so I don't know what she will want more, me or the cat, because they're just very good together. And so there is a bond there that happens, and we need to know why that bond happens. So it was an amazing thing to see, and I did it in so many cases where I always see the pattern. So going from the law we know that our life is dependent on things. Life is conditioned by our needs. We cannot live without satisfying the needs that life expects. And if all needs are fulfilled, we have normal function. Health is there, because we are inside the law, the range where we have to have all our needs fulfilled. And outside, when we go beyond that line and the needs are not fulfilled enough, the body brings a symptom, it speaks to us. And if you don't understand the message, then we might go further and end up in death, while we would have come back from here, because this is the tolerance place, we could go back from here into the normal range. So that's why it's so important to understand the message of the body when it tells you when you get sick. So how many kind of needs do we have? Now, in order to understand the body's language, you need to know the body's needs. Yes? So we all know that we need physical need, chemistry, oxygen, water, warmth. And we saw already that our body, when we get to the edge of the range where we have to be, brings a reaction. And it's easy to see when we're freezing, we know it's too low the temperature. And when we're sweating, we know it's too high the temperature. Do we do that unintentionally? It just comes because it's a law there. The body is set for 37 degrees Celsius. And he has a tolerance. But when that tolerance is over, then he must bring the symptoms. And he brings it quite fast so that we can adjust to do it. But now, when you have the noise in the ear, which is not perceptible, when you have a sudden hearing loss, or a dizziness, or even cancer, what is the body telling you? And if it tells us something, then we need to find it out. And what did I find out in my inquiry? What is the story? What is the content of our mental issues? What is in our mind? What's the needs that we have in our mind? Why is this lady suffering after she's suffering that she says, my cat has passed away, but I don't know where she is. She went to the neighbors, she would have loved to bury her or whatever. But what is in her mind? Why is she sad? What is she missing? What is in her mind? What's the center of her mind? You see, I didn't know this. I came to it in my practice. You know what is the center of all stories that I've heard in my life? What's the center of it? It's love. It's all about love. But I never learned anything in medical school about love, did you? I know there are some physicians here. Did you do a course about love in medical school? Yes or no? There is none. And I realized in my practice that all the issues my patient had coming to me with their physical symptoms, looking to their thought process, I realized that the issue was a non-physical element. Because I ask sometimes to my patient and even the audience, is love physical? Or is it just spiritual? What is love? What is righteousness? What is liberty? What is security? Then some people come up and say, it's physical. I say, oh, come please and give me the formula. Because if I have the formula, I can treat how many of my patients? All of them. If they come to me and say, oh, I am so sad because someone passed away or because of divorce or whatever happens, I said, no worries, I have some drops of love. You take it in and your mourning for your husband stops. Is that good? You just give them that's what they need. If they have a lack of righteousness, you have a drops of righteousness. You fill it up, and how do you feel it? Is that possible? You see, one of the things that today are very, very growing is security. That is fear. Fear is the lack of security. How do we satisfy that need? Because we need to satisfy it. It has to be clear, and that need is just in our thoughts. It's just here, it's imaginary. It cannot be grasped by chemistry, by formulas. So I stand there in my practice, having a physical issue and a spiritual lack. And the question is, what is the body telling me? Spiritual needs have no limit. You can never have enough love. Some people come and say, my mother loves me too much. That means that she doesn't love you, because she controls you. That's love of the mother, you know? I don't know how it is here, but mothers are very loving, and they believe love and control comes together, yes? It's very hard for mothers to give up control. Because they confound love and control. So there is no limit on this side, because you cannot have half of love, you can never have 99% security. If you have 99% security, how much security do you have? None. I tell you a story of my patient. She had a autosclerosis, that's the medical term. There is one of the ossicles that gets to not be moved anymore because it grows kind of a split, yes, called is building around, and then the ossicle doesn't move anymore so well. And if you go for surgery, you can have surgery, and the risk of remaining deaf after the surgery is 1%. High risk or low risk? You always say it is low risk. But for each patient, how great is the risk? You see, this is the trick of the statistics. Because she thought 1 in 100 get deaf at this surgery, she will be okay. But if she's the one Then what happens? Then the risk is 100%. And she was the one. And she was suffering now depression because she said, I would have never done it. Yeah, but now it's done. Because you can injure that very thin layer, and then when the fluid comes out of the cochlea, you're deaf. Nothing works. So, you see, 99% security is no security in reality. Yeah? And our mind knows that. But we just go into doing things because we believe they're going to come out. So now the question is, how many body reactions do we have to show the lack of love in our life? And I tell you this result, and it might shock you or amaze you, but what I came to observe in 20 years is disease in all its forms shows to me the lack of love, of righteousness, that is of the spiritual element that our minds feed on. Now understanding that, for me, it makes sense. Now let's go a little bit deeper. Relationships are just in our minds. Can thought about them cause disease? What do you think? That's why I had to start my study about thoughts. What are thoughts? Have you ever thought what thoughts are? Are it your thoughts or not your thoughts? What are thoughts? We should know what are thoughts, shouldn't we? Where do they come from? Where do they come from? Would it be important to know the origin of the thought? If thought is so important, then where is the thought process starting? Would it be good to know? Because the thought process must have a starting point. And to know that would bring you into the control of your thinking. Most of my patients believe that they cannot control their thoughts. But if you cannot control your thoughts, who's going to suffer? Yeah? And then another question, and this is very, very important. What can we do? Let me know this answer. What can thoughts do? Or better, to ask the questions the other way around. What can they not do? How many things in your life you do by your thoughts? How many things? How many things in your life you do by your thoughts? All of them. I heard many, so I didn't jump on that. Because imagine everything we do is the result of a thought. Now, should that have an importance for us or not? Yes or no? So why do we not have any emphasis in the medical work on the thought? Why not? When everything we do is the result of a thought. I'm very glad because I learned all those things from my patient. And I had one day, he was I think 18 years old, and he came because both of his parotid glands were swollen. The left one was bigger than the right one. And since I looked not just to his parotides of his head, I said, what do you have else in your body? And he said, ingrown nails on the tongue of your foot. Now, what do you guess? Which tongue, the nail of which tongue was more ingrown in his body? The right side or the left side? Now, I don't want to challenge you too much, but you know that what is in on this side is still governed from the same part of the brain. And then the nerves crosses and they go down to the other side. So there was a beautiful picture. You have a big swollen parotid on your left side and a stronger ingrown nail on your right tongue. You have a little swelling of this side and you have the same on your left tongue. Would any physician bring those things together? And I was still at the beginning when I had this patient and I asked him the question, do you think your thoughts are making that? What was his answer? No. And if you go and ask someone, can your thought do that? They will say, no, but how can you prove it that not? Because I tell my patient, I say, you can never move anything of your body without your thought first. How can you say that your thought cannot do anything else as well? How can you say that? So, my attention went from the body to the mind, to the thought process. Because I realized the issue that men have is not in the externals. Because they know when they're hungry, they know when they're that. But when something happens that is connected to their relationship, that is connected to their spiritual need of love or righteousness and that, they have no solution for that. And then they put a pressure in their body. So everything you see around yourself is the result of a thought. Everything. Nothing comes into existence except by thought. So this is why thoughts are all powerful. Because everything comes out by thoughts. Before you can do anything with your body, you must think and you must decide to do those things. So what is their role in health? What role do they play in health? Now imagine we would find out that thoughts make one sick. What would be our health approach? Would we build hospitals or schools? What would we build? Where would we put the emphasis? Education. We need to show them how things work. Because in which school you go, and the child is taught his thought process, how he takes decisions, how things work physiologically, and how it impacts his body. Any school that we have on earth for that? I don't know of none. And that's amazing. I am still amazed after 20 years of my practice to see that the essence of life, which is love, is totally neglected when it comes to the sickness of the body. Isn't that amazing? It's just, I'm amazed, and I know that we have an enemy, and the enemy succeeded to take that first need that man has away from him. Not that he cannot have it, but it is eclipsed out of his mind, so whenever he has something physical, he thinks it must be physical, the cause, and not realizing that it's not the case. So I didn't have an answer to these questions 20 years ago, but I have an answer today. And you could have a week or a month just studying this 3 or 5 things, understanding of it. Now going home, I said, my teenage children challenged me. They said, how can you prove your observation to be true? I said, look, this is the story. I just started. This is a story. And they said, how can you prove? Because everyone has issues in life. Do you have issues in your life? Yes or no? Yes, everyone has issues. And how can you bring the issue of life together with the symptom of your body? So observation is subjective. How can observation become objective? How can it? Because if it remains subjective, it's my observation and you have to believe me. My patient has to believe me if I cannot prove him by objective things that things are like they are. If I would come to my patient and say, look, you have to believe me because it's my observation, then that's not science. That's faith, that's belief, that's religion. And medical doctors do not have to do with religion, they have to have scientific things. No, things must be absolute. So in all areas of nature we find things in the physical, in the life world, we find things that are changeable and things that are unchangeable. The changeable things is the appearance, the size, the color, and so on. Can you relay on that? I mean, they're changeable. You cannot orient so well on changeable things. But there is the unchangeable. The law by which everything functions is unchangeable. The structure as something is built cannot be changed. The functions are absolute. The basic needs for that what is needed to function cannot be changed. And the source from where the needs are fulfilled cannot be changed. Do you need oxygen? Yes. Can you go and take the oxygen from the water? Just jump into the water and take a deep breath and see if it satisfies your need. Will it work? Not at all. Because the source where you have to take your oxygen is set by the one that created it. Always the source is set. You cannot switch it. You cannot say I take it from here or from there. The source from where the needs are fulfilled are absolute. So decisive is for us to know the unchangeable. Now before I started my practice, I didn't know of this, and I had to find out what is that I can prove first for myself, because it must be provable. And then to my patient, that the disease is an issue of love. It's a lack of love. So, to answer questions, we need references. We need a measure. So we always need 2 kinds of information. If we have time tomorrow or so on, we will study that a little deeper. But when we have a question, we have to put that on one plate of the scale. And in order to have the answer of this, we need another information as well. Now let's see, if you want to know how much is a kilo of banana, what do you need first? You have the scale, you have the bananas. What do you need first in order to know if it's a kilo or not? What do you need? You need a measure, yes? So you can never know how much is a kilo of banana if you don't have the measure before. And the measure needs to be changeable or unchangeable. So the kilogram is the same in Singapore like it is in Germany or anywhere else. The meter is the same. You can take it in inches or in metric, it's the same thing. It's a measure that tells you how long or how wide something is. Now if I ask you, how long is this pointer? We have 2 options. What are the 2 options in there? If I ask you how wide is this, how many options do you have? what would you do? What would you do? Would you estimate or measure? Some people might estimate. That's, yeah, I know. No, friends. Estimation is not precise. It's subjective. But if we have a measure for this, how much disunity would we have in this room? Would we all be united along this is? Yes, because it has only one length. It does not have two lengths. It's only one. So we have one length, and now we come, we measure it with an absolute measurement, and we all come to the same conclusion. Any fightings? Yes or no? Where would fighting start? Where would we fight? When it's just about my own estimation. Yeah? You say it's 10, the other says it's 10.5, the other says it's 12. And so we would have what? A fight. And that's how it is when you don't have a measure. So the question is, do we have a measure for our thoughts? Can we measure thoughts? I mean, can we have a reference for the spiritual information, how it works? Because if we have no reference, we will always remain wrong. Guessing, subjective. Never say, this is so because it is so. So, what is in the mind that which is the measure? We have to have a foreknowledge of the unchangeable and absolute things. Because it's a mental thing. We don't have a weight to it. Yes, in our mind. But we must have something by which we prove on the other side that the information that encounters us is correct. That's a foreknowledge. It's a foreknowledge. Before you can know if thoughts can do the disease, you need to have a measure by which you do that. Because on that measure, you can trust to give the right answer. It is so, because the measure says it is so. That's how I think. So, where only could appear a mistake? Where can you only go wrong? What's the vulnerable place in the whole system? Is it on this side or on this side? Are you still with me? It's on this side. So the measure by which you measure determines everything in your life. And information is understood to be correct or incorrect according to the new standard. You can never go by estimation. It will kill you in the end. What it does in reality today with us. Because we go by estimation or by unknowledge. We have to know what is the standard that we use in order to measure the thoughts and the spiritual information it gives correct or not. So, the reference. What is the reference? It cannot be movable or changeable. Yes? You cannot stand on a moving place. You must have the spiritual measure has to have no contradiction. If in any concept you find contradictions, the concept is not true. Contradiction proves that things are not in line and not correct. So it must be without contradiction. And it must be an information that cannot be mistaken because it needs no interpretation. It is so because it interprets itself. And the first thing of this block, this is the foundation, I hope you understand, is the law of nature. And I came to understand it first in my practice. So, the universe, and that's what we understand object has simple things. That is, everything that is in this creation that we can grasp works as a channel. There is no exception. If you bring me one thing that does not work as a channel, then the law is not law. But there is none, because everything must have an entrance, and everything must have an access. And the law that is the basic law of the universe, or we call it the law of life, the law of everything, has two things to govern: the entrance and the exit. So nothing can exist or function by itself. So first the channel, whatever channel it is, it must take. But it never takes for itself. Nothing can do anything for itself, but it takes in order to give. That's at the exit. And everything works in a circuit. Why did that thing make that noise when we switched the one things together? What happened? It was the wrong input or the wrong output? It was the wrong input. Yeah? So, for every channel, the input is set. But tonight, because the time is short and I usually have 3 hours to speak, we just go and see one principle of the law, which is basic to be understood, because you will see why. So there is an order of function. And the order of function is, what comes first? The taking or the giving? So can we all know that that is first and that is second? Yes? The question is, can the order be changed so that you take the second as the first? Can it be changed or not? Now imagine we have to eat. Where do we put the food? In our ear or in our mouth? Where does it go from there? Is it unidirectional or bidirectional? Well, bidirectional is wrong. Yeah? It's wrong. Yeah? So, can we put at the entrance what comes out at the exit? I mean, it's an ugly example, but at least it makes sense, yes? So, never the second can be put first. And I tell you in advance, on our spiritual level, mind level, this is our mistake. That we believe we can give before we take. How are relationships? A take and give or a give and take? How is relationship? It's a give and take. That means it's opposite than the law. But we're not aware of it. So everything that can fool us on mental level is to make the second first. And then nothing would work anymore. It stops working. You block the channel. That's why disease is nothing else than a blocked channel. So, is this the right order of function? You understand what it is here? We have a horse and we have a car. I'll call it a car or is that again? Yes? Is that? Yeah. So this is a right functional order, is it? Because you have to put the horse where?
Before.
In the back or in the front of the car? There is. Any options? Also, that's the law. The law doesn't give you another option. It sets the right order first, and then you see also what needs to be done. So when we put it like this, will it work? You can sit in that wagon here and wait for long, it should move. See, when we were children, I don't know, like country, we had no cars when I was raising up in Romania in a poor family. And we had our wagon, and we didn't have a horse, we just had a cow. So the cow was giving us the milk, it was giving us, but also when we had to go to bring something from the field, the cow was put in front of the wagon, so we had to get the thing from it. You cannot change the order. You cannot change it. And we will see tomorrow that there is only one general mistake of which we are not aware, but the body shows us that it is a change of order. So, what comes first? You see this line? And here is what? A drop of water, yes? So, what comes first? The water here or the fly? How do you know? What comes first? How do we know what comes first? No, we haven't seen the fly. I could say the fly did the water here. What is true? How can we prove it? Because we have just a picture. And one says the fly does the water, or no, whatever, and the other says no, the water is first. How can we know what is first without knowing? By the law. I'll give you another question, which is challenging you also. What comes first? Disease or bacteria? What's first? How do we know? How can we prove what comes first? Because this is an important thing. What comes first? How can we know? The law tells us to us. We just need to see what this does here. Does it take or does it give? So when it takes, what is first? The water or the fly? You see, there are only two things that we're confused on. That from where you take must be first. So do I go eat before I put something on the table? Is that possible? Also, you see, that's not possible. You first have to have something on the table, and then you can eat. And if the fly eats or drinks there, she is always second. Never primary. So that's why we have to understand what comes first. Because then we're very confused. Just to find the water and the fly does not prove anything. That's why the question is, what does the bacteria do on our skin? Do they eat or do they give? Do they take or do they give? So if they ate, if they take, then they are secondary, not primary. And imagine if we switch the order, where do we get? So we'll see more of that. Now, the channel is there. You have the basic law. Everything needs to take in order to give. The order is set by law, but now we need to know the human being. We need to know the human being. And now we know this structure. It's how we are built is absolute. How we function is absolute. Every eye does the same in every human being. Are you with me? Yes? Every tongue, everything, every vocal cord works the same in every human being, except you damage it and then it doesn't work. So how we function is good. And now the basic needs, can we function without needs? No, we all know. Some people come to me and say there is no absolute truth. And they say, okay, so let me keep your mouth and nose shut to see if you die or not. No? Because that's absolute. But on spiritual level, people say there's nothing absolute. But this is all absolute. So the basic needs are absolute. And we have how many? How many needs do we have? Basic needs? Two kinds of basic needs? We have the love and chemistry. What comes first? What comes first? You know what comes first? What comes first? Are we united? I mean, the law must tell to us what comes first. Do you first think and then move your body, or your body moves and then you think? What comes first? Love is first in love. Chemistry is sustaining love. And Jesus has proved that when he did not make out of bread, stones out of bread. Because he said, I live by information, by the word. You know, we live by information. Why would we have so many social media? Why do we have social media? Is that a need or not? Is curiosity a need or not? It's more in women, I know. Yeah, when I go home, then my mother, my wife, and the cat comes to see what I have in my suitcase. Everyone is interested. Not in me, but in the suitcase. So, you see, information is that by what we live. And if you want to conquer the world, you need to have the information to offer. That's why if you want to be and rule in the world, you need to have two things. Schools and media. And then you don't need arms. You don't need guns. How many? 10 minutes? No? So all are unchangeable laws. Information comes first. All are absolute, no other options. This is what I call science, because no one can change this. You can do whatever you want. This is science. This is things that have no other option. So we have the human body with many organs. Does it have many organs? Yes? You know the organs? What do we miss? What organ do we miss? I don't see any children here because I would love to communicate with them. So do we have the heart here? So what do we miss? The brain, yes? We miss the brain. Is the brain important? Why is it important? Because how many organs are connected to the brain? All of them. Do we need to go to school for that? No, I think that's general knowledge. All organs are bound to the brain and they all function in a circuit, in a clear order. What comes first? What comes first? the brain? What comes first? So that there are things work. So the functions of the body need a coordinator. Who coordinates it? Who coordinates the brain? Because he who has the brain, he has how much of the body? Whole body. So the brain is made up of two hemispheres. They are not connected together. The right hemisphere and the left ones, if you cut it through, you don't cut through the hemispheres. That's a very important detail of anatomy. Because it helps us to see why do we have one-sided disease. Why the cancer come on the left side of the breast and on the right side? From where does it start? I know medicine because they believe that all is by chance. They don't look that everything is by playing work. So here we have the brain and opinion cells. The whole human body is in the cortex. Small layer there. Every center of our body is in. And it's on the right side and on the left side because we have half from mother and half from father. We'll see even that if we have time. And then all the nerves, the cells are in the cortex, and then the nerves go down, the lines, I say, the cables go into the limbic system where they bring a reaction to and then they switch to the other side. The cortex starts with an electrical impulse and brings, as a result, it makes chemistry in the limbic system, and then it comes back as an emotion to the cortex. And now the question is, where do the thoughts come from? And the question is, what comes first? Thought or brain? So that's something to think about until tomorrow, is it? I hope you got a little bit challenged to think, to look to your body as a mirror of what you sometimes think. And we will see in the next 2 days how the principle is, how that works. Thank you for listening. Thank you.